Welcome, and thank you for joining us. We really are excited to have you here. We are going to kick off today. We're just letting people trickling in at the moment, letting people come in, and feel free to give a shout out in the chat and let people know where you are from. It's really exciting to have a lot of folks here, already seeing a lot of activity. Yeah, and we will kick it off. So my name is Ben. I'm Ben Mitchell, and I am a technical evangelist at Datadog. And on behalf of the entire Datadog team, welcome to the Observability Spotlight. Woohoo! Today is going to be about front-end monitoring and mobile monitoring. And we are excited to have you here for this and for the wonderful talks that we planned for you. And we hope you enjoy them. So we should check out what we are going to do today. Let me share my screen here with you, and we can take a look at the agenda. Let's do that. Okay, so we are going to drop into an introduction to the digital experience monitoring. And then after that, we're going to move into the business impact of core web vitals with Melissa from Google. After which we will hear about synthetics in CI and how adding synthetics into the workflow of your CI process can save you a lot of trouble and help you have the same experience everywhere. And then after that, we'll be hearing from Danny over at Intercom about shipping their monolith and how they use synthetics to build better and safer deployments. After which we'll be talking about improving the user experience with Priyanshi, and she will focus in on some mobile real user monitoring issues and how that can help your user experience. After which we will meet with Brian from Dollar Shave Club and talk about bringing engineering teams closer to their users and how integrating RUM into their process as a front-end team brought them a lot closer to their users and help them have more control and say with the data that they saw, putting this type of observability into their process. So that was really exciting. That will be really exciting. And yeah, and then we will close out after that. And just excited to be here, and thank you for joining us. And I am going to kick it over to GJ here in a moment. So yeah, okay. So throughout this event, I should say a couple of things. You can feel free to submit any questions in the chat box. We have team members there and guests available for you to answer any questions that you might have. And that's about it. Hooray, let's spin it up. From here, I'll turn things over to GJ. He is Datadog's Director of Product Management for Digital Experience Monitoring, which is what he's here to help us understand. So I will kick it on over to you, GJ.
Okay, thanks a lot.
Thank you.
Up, share my screen. Okay, don't know if you see it. Up. All right. Hi everyone. As said, I'm GJ. Nice to see you all, and thanks a lot for coming. And welcome to this introduction. Today, I'll be talking about how DEM came to be, the questions we can answer with such monitoring tools, and how Datadog does DEM and sees its role in this space. So when Datadog started in 2010, we started with infrastructure monitoring, giving insights into the availability and performance of the new type of architectures offered by cloud infrastructure vendors. New technologies required new paradigms. Then we extended our offering, and organizations began using us to monitor the backend performance of their applications to add an additional layer of visibility. If an issue occurs in their application, they could use the 3 pillars of observability, aka infrastructure metrics, backend traces, and logs to troubleshoot it. And now we have front-end web and mobile application monitoring. And here is where digital experience monitoring comes in. And it also comes at the right time, when development practices have changed a lot with the arrival of continuous integration and continuous deployment, of feature flagging, of SPA or single page applications, and the rise of various frameworks on both JavaScript and mobile applications. First, what is DEM? Well, for us, DEM combines backend, front-end, and mobile application monitoring, because organizations need to do more than just understand if their application is up and running. This is a good place to start, but it's only the beginning. They need to get real-time insights into user experience. And each user is going to have a different journey on a specific device, from laptop to desktop to mobile and beyond. Users might be shopping over Wi-Fi or a cellular data network, working in office or from home, from locations all around the world. And since user experience is directly related to business results, it is necessary to understand how technical issues impact the user experience, no matter where they happen in the stack, starting from the perspective of end users. Monitoring only the backend services and the infrastructure wouldn't provide an end-to-end perspective, which is the only one that matters to your end users. As businesses continue to increase their digital presence, it's more important than ever to understand which parts of your applications are the most revenue impacting and should be improved in priority. So if user experience is such an integral part of our applications, it's important to understand what users care about. And here's the thing. Users don't want to think about your application. They just want to use it. They don't only care if your application is up and running. They care that it's easy and pleasant to use. They don't care about the performance metrics that you use. They just want your app to be fast and for your checkout button to work as promised. If your app is easy to use and it works well, users will come back to it over and over again. They might even share it with the people they know. But to answer this question, you will need to put your users in the center of your monitoring. So what are questions we can answer with DEM tools? Well, we can explore troubleshooting questions like, how many users are being impacted by this error? How frequently is an error occurring? At what point in my user journey did the problem arise? Is this part of my website stable? Am I introducing a regression with this new code deployment? We can even explore higher level business questions like, how is our latest feature being used by customers? Was our holiday marketing campaign successful? How many orders are we receiving per minute? While there are a lot of different types of DEM tools out there, today we are going to focus on the two most common types of tools. First, we have synthetic testing, which allows us to proactively test our application from different locations around the world in production or as part of our CI/CD pipeline. Next, we have real user monitoring, or RUM, which gives us end-to-end visibility into the actions of our real users on web and mobile applications. At Datadog, we think these tools get to their best value in conjunction with application performance monitoring. APM provides distributed tracing from and can be used from front-end and mobile applications down to the backend services. But as you add more monitoring tools to your stack, you can encounter more problems which expand as your usage does. So just to give you a few examples of what are of some common problems that you can have with DEM point solutions. Adding more and more tools to your tech stack can lead to tool sprawl, disorganization, and frustration. It's easy for communication to break down because, for instance, if you have front-end and mobile developers on one tool, support use another one, product using the third one, backend and infrastructure a fourth, it's very tough to share information, which leads to gaps in visibility or additional work to connect the dots between one part of your stack to another. Different tools have different level of data retention and granularity, which get in the way of easily calculating important metrics, such as impacted users, such as SLOs, etc., etc. So how does Datadog respond to these monitoring challenges? Well, first, we combine several tools in one. We combine real user monitoring for front-end and mobile applications and collecting the production data out of these. Then we have application performance monitoring to collect the backend traces. Then we have synthetic monitoring to proactively test browser journeys, browser transactions, APIs, and even the network layer of your application. And then you can collect all these to infrastructure monitoring to give a complete visibility, to provide the complete vision of what's happening to your applications in production. So if you want me to explain what is the Datadog way of doing digital experience monitoring, well, I'd say that we try to keep it simple. And by simple, I mean with a single unified platform where all these tools are combined into a unified, correlated fashion, where all the performance problems, all the errors, all the user behavior are correlated automatically with what's happening under the hood, while with an ease of use that needs to be as high as possible. And that's why we provide, for instance, out-of-the-box dashboards, why we provide Watchdog Insights, where we can highlight what's happening to even subpopulations that would be hard to identify directly. That's why we also ask you to use zero query language or even zero coding language if you want to create synthetic tests. But we try also to do it in a non-simplistic fashion, meaning that we want to provide you aggregated and granular data at the same time, because aggregated data helps us make business decisions and prioritize. But the granular ones are the ones that will help you troubleshoot the issues that one specific user will be flagging for you. And at the same time, we provide the full stack visibility where you can analyze all the data correlated across all the tech stacks to quickly identify anything that's happening in your application, set up custom alerts or to notify on-call engineers for the most critical issues, etc., etc. So please join us for the rest of the event, where we'll be discussing synthetics and ROM in more depth. Make some product announcements. Yes, we have some for today, as well as sharing customer and partner stories about their experience with digital experience monitoring. Thanks a lot.
Woo! Thank you, GJ. That was awesome. Really, really great to hear just all those updates and how we can use those in the front-end development process. Thank you, GJ, for that. Yeah, and next up we have Melissa Mitchell. Melissa is a web ecosystem consultant at Google. She's going to help us demystify the business impact of core web vitals. So I'm going to turn it on over to you, Melissa.
Hello, thank you. My name is Melissa Mitchell. I am a web ecosystem consultant here at Google, and I'm giving a presentation that was originally given at Google I/O this year by my teammates Sweta and Sarab on how adopting core web vitals can positively impact your business. You can review the original presentation as well as other Google I/O talks on YouTube on the Google Chrome Developers channel. Using some examples of global brands, in this presentation, we will cover optimization techniques that were used, key learnings from these companies' journeys, and most importantly, how you can get started on your Core Web Vitals journey. Anyone who knows about Core Web Vitals has probably seen this slide before, but let's take a moment to introduce this again because different people in the organization see it differently. Core Web Vitals consists of 3 different metrics: largest contentful paint, to measure how fast the content loads, first input delay to measure how quickly the content is interactive, and cumulative layout shift, which measures the visual stability. I'm sure none of us likes content that keeps jumping around. Interestingly, no matter who you are or what role you play, the Core Web Vitals can impact your work. Let's take a closer look. As a user, it really defines how you experience the website. As a product manager, it's important to take care of these metrics because otherwise it results in a disruptive user journey and potentially impacting the effectiveness of your released features. And as a developer, you see it as upcoming sprints full of exciting and groundbreaking work. As a developer, we all just love to see our work being appreciated by the developer communities and, most importantly, end users. But in the end, it all boils down to money. And as an executive and your company, and hence you might be missing out on all those important dollars which are critical for your business. In a nutshell, no matter which side you're on, the good news is Core Web Vitals brings everyone towards a shared goal, and that is user centricity. And on that note, let's take a look at a company which has always been performance focused and understands the importance of measuring user-centric metrics. Tokopedia is the #1 e-commerce site in Indonesia, and Indonesia has the 4th largest population in the world. They have over 100 million monthly actors. For them, improving LCP in the field resulted in much better user engagement. Here's their story. After Core Web Vitals was announced, there was an increased emphasis at Tokopedia on using real user monitoring, or RUM, to measure field data. But what's interesting to note is that they are using a combination of lab and RUM tools in a really great way. Developers use tools like Lighthouse and Chrome Dev Tools for day-to-day analysis, and RUM as the source of truth on how their users are actually experiencing their website. For that reason, they adopted Core Web Vitals as the ultimate measure of a user's website performance. This made it easier to get buy-in from C-level and cross-functional teams because everyone can agree on user-centric metrics. They even use comprehensive dashboards like this one for company-wide tracking. This is a great evolution for Tokopedia, right? They even achieved a Lighthouse score of 84 and an LCP of 2.5 seconds. So how did they do this? Well, in the second half of 2020, they focused on improving LCP, CLS, and FID. They found that LCP was the biggest bottleneck to the top 6 pages throughout the conversion funnel. The next question they had to answer is, how difficult would it have been to fix? And it turns out it wasn't very difficult. In fact, the key to success is really to fix the low-hanging fruits first. Let's quickly deep dive into what they did to pass the LCP threshold and subsequently create business impact. To begin with, they experimented with different types of rendering techniques and found that server-side rendering just the LCP element, which was the dynamic banner image at the top, gave them the most benefit since it led to smaller HTML sizes and hence faster time to first byte. That was followed by preloading the LCP element. As you can see on the bottom right, the image loaded a couple of frames faster when preloading. And finally, and some common image optimization techniques like compression and the use of next generation formats like WebP. They also lazy loaded non-LCP images. As a result of adopting these best practices, some of which you'll see in Lighthouse recommendations too, they saw a 55% better LCP. So the takeaway here is that even adopting such well-known best practices, they have managed to achieve amazing results. Like 23% better average session duration and 15% more time spent on site. The key to their success was that they prioritized improving their metrics and they focused on top traffic pages within the conversion funnel. As a decision maker, You can also use both lab and field tools to see which metrics need the most work, like LCP in Tokopedia's case. But you might be thinking at this point, that's great for Tokopedia, but I'm new to adopting for web performance as a KPI. How can I validate the importance of Core Web Vitals for my company? And if you're thinking that, it's a great question. As a concrete example, let's talk about Vodafone. Vodafone is an interesting case of a company who pivoted from a more traditional performance metrics to the Core Web Vitals. They were historically measuring DOM content loaded as the primary metric for site performance. However, sometimes optimizing for DOM content loaded can hurt rendering time. After Core Web Vitals came out, they decided to experiment with how it impacts their lower funnel user behavior. And lower funnel means closer to conversion. Their methodology was very notable. They constructed a well-devised server-side A/B test on important ads landing pages in which users could convert from. They built two different versions of the landing page, which were functionally and visually the same, except that version A was optimized for a 31% better LCP. Vodafone achieved better LCP with a couple of fixes. First, they server-side rendered their critical HTML, including a heavy widget. This resulted in less render blocking JavaScript on the client side. Second, the most common best practices, they invested in image optimization. It's important to point out that by using server-side A/B testing, Vodafone prevented additional rendering costs from the client-side testing from affecting their experiment. And in the end, they were surprised to see that the result trickled down the entire conversion funnel. They saw 15% more users converting as a successful lead, followed by 11% more users visiting the checkout cart, and eventually 8% more sales. I can already imagine the smiles on the executives out there. Looking back at the two examples, the main thing we can learn is that you can achieve a lot by adopting best practices and low-hanging fruits. GD, for example, used a technique that using the fixed aspect ratio elements for affecting CLS, and was again a very straightforward and easy fix. For LCP, they deferred their third-party scripts and split the CDN keys to keep the time to first byte low. And as a result, they saw an 8% less bounce rate for mobile article pages. Lazada leveraged Lighthouse as a development tool to quickly identify wins, such as remove render blocking JavaScript and CSS, and image optimization techniques like next-gen formats, along with deferring non-critical ones. Just by doing this, their 3 times improvement of LCP across all their pages translated into nearly a 17% better mobile conversion rate. And for Yao, apart from the fixes like using next-gen image formats and preloading hero images, what worked very well was the dynamic import query to only above the fold content. This led to a 3 times better LCP and eventually 108% more ads click-through rate. So far, we have seen some great examples of companies that have benefited from optimizing Core Web Vitals, and there are many other brands globally who have done the same. Many of you might be aware that Google Search also announced that Core Web Vitals would be adopted as a part of a ranking signal called page experience. While search ranking could be an incentive for you to improve your website, adopting Core Web Vitals has several other short and long-term business benefits beyond ranking. And all of these companies didn't wait for the ranking signal to be enforced and adopted Core Web Vitals anyway. And this is because it's the right thing to do for users. Establishing good performance well and early adds up to building a brand relationship with the user in the long term. So how can you get started right now? The most important thing you can do is to start measuring your site. Please use field metrics. There are various tools to help that are available to you, including Datadog. But for some examples of Google tools that are great to start with, they are relatively easy to set up. And then if you want to go the extra mile, you can integrate with many third-party tools, which are listed on the right and already offer Core Web Vitals built into their service. But what if you need a bit more confidence in the correlation of Core Web Vitals with your business? Well, you can do a bit more research to gather some definitive data. That's what Farfetch did. Before investigating in Core Web Vitals, Farfetched wanted to see how it would impact their business in terms of exit rate and conversion rate. So they captured the Web Vital metrics across millions of sessions over an extended period of time. This analysis was done on Chrome data only and represents about 34% of their web traffic. What they found was that LCP showed a strong correlation to both exit and conversion rates, whereas FID showed some patterns of correlation to exit rate. CLS is still a work in progress. Because of these findings, the research team were convinced about the benefits of Core Web Vitals for their organization. But they had a bigger task. How do they convince others, cross-functional teams, to also adopt the Core Web Vital metrics? To do this, they had a very clever solution. They built a business calculator for company-wide use. No matter whether they're a PM or in marketing, they can estimate the business impact of Core Web Vitals upfront. Another example is Blue Triangle, a digital monitoring company, which wanted to understand how LCP impacts its conversion rates for their customers. After measuring thousands of sessions for product pages for an anonymous online retailer, they found that much higher percentage of users go on to make purchases when LCP is less than 2 seconds. So the data speaks for itself. You can choose to follow some of these methods using field tools that we saw earlier. Before we wrap up, we wanted to share a few tips that we learned from a lot of the companies mentioned earlier. Tip number 1, prioritize. It's okay to start small by picking one metric or one page. Lab tools are your friend here. You can use them to prioritize your effort. Also, if you want to pick one page to optimize first, try to pick a high traffic one to deliver meaningful results. Make your effort count. Tip number 2, deploy properly planned A/B tests. Vodafone is a great example of a well-planned A/B test. Similarly, Flipkart is a firm believer of that too. They wanted to see whether LCP optimization would further boost their already good bounce rate. Hence, they chose a server-side A/B testing to measure the impact. I think using server-side was a great idea because although client-side testing libraries could be easier to set up, it could badly hurt rendering time. And last tip, invest in continuous monitoring to prevent regressions because performance is a journey and not a destination. Just like how Tokopedia invested heavily in monitoring tools, my last example, iCook, used periodic lab tests as a preemptive monitoring and field data as the source of truth on how their users experience their website, plus validate the optimizations going into production. As a result, the most significant benefit was that their engineering team successfully built a performance culture and now see Core Web Vitals as an important product feature. By using such comprehensive monitoring, iCook was able to identify and implement opportunities for improvement with some great results. Thank you for listening. I hope these examples resonated with you, one and all, across teams, and I hope that you're thinking of adopting Core Web Vitals for your business and seeing it flourishing. Thank you. And I will turn it back over to Ben for Q&A.
Woo! Wonderful. Thank you, Melissa. That was great. That was so great. And so much to unpack there and how we can use Core Web Vitals to create the best user experience and integrate with the web well. And just so grateful to hear that today. So thank you for the great presentation. Yeah, I just have a couple of questions here to throw at you. Number one would be, what is the difference between auditing an app with Lighthouse versus page seed insights? And there's a follow-up question to that, but I'll start with that.
No, actually, that's a great question. So page seed insights is a really interesting tool because part of it is Lighthouse. So anytime you see that lab data on there, that is coming directly from the performance audit in Lighthouse, and they're run on Google servers. The other part of PageSpeed Insights has field data, and this comes from the Chrome User Experience Report. And so this is real user data that you can see from opted in Chrome users, and you can see how that URL is doing across those sites. So in a way, Lighthouse has many audits. It doesn't have just performance. It also has accessibility, SEO, best practices. And PageSpeed Insights reduces that down to just the performance recommendations.
Got it.
And then lets you compare it to the field data that is in the Chrome User Experience Report.
Okay, that makes so much sense. Hey, somebody needs to get Tejas Kumar a Datadog t-shirt. He just asked for one, just so you know. Sorry to interrupt there. So yeah, that's awesome. That makes so much sense. So performance versus like the gamut of things. And a follow-up question would be, hey, you know, with these various Google tools, sometimes they seem to report different core vital results. And I know that given on what you said, that might be because there is additional calculation going on there or something. But for instance, like if you use the Search Console and it shows one of your site's scores, that it's, you know, might say it's not passing, whereas if you use page seed insights, it shows that your site might be passing. So how would you correlate the difference between those two and figure out like how a site or an app or whatever is really doing?
That's actually a great question, especially with Search Console in there. One thing to keep in mind is what the tool is measuring. So the first question to ask is it lab or is it field? So you're going to see different things in Lighthouses versus the Chrome User Experience Report or PageSpeed Insights, because Lighthouse is a single instance of a run, and field data is a very broad spectrum. And usually the numbers shown are 75th percentile. Now, Search Console is yet different still, because rather than looking at a single URL or an entire origin, which you can do either or in some of these tools, Search Console has what's called page groups. And so they're grouping together what Google sees as similar URLs together and collectively looking at the score there. And so what you can do is you can pick a URL in that list of that page group, and you're going to have a range of experiences within that group. And so that's one of the differences that can happen there, is you're looking at a different subset that you're measuring in it.
Okay, that makes so much more sense, because it's hard to separate what's going on with the two, but sometimes, but that made perfect sense, and thank you for going through that. We've got a couple more questions here, so I'm gonna try to roll through these. So I heard there was a recent change to cumulative layout shift scoring. What are those changes, and how could they affect my current scores?
Yeah, no, that's an excellent. So in April, Google announced that there's going to be an adjustment to how the cumulative layout shift will be calculated. Before this, it is for the entire lifetime of the page. So if you happen to have a web app that is very long-lived or has infinite scrolling or any of those other sorts of things, any layout shift that happens, maybe a minute into the page load or whatnot, is still adding into that cumulative layout shift score.
Oh, okay.
The change is that they're now maxing out at 5-second windows. And then there's a gap of 1 second. A really helpful resource to learn more about this is on web.dev. So if you go to web.dev, look up some of the CLS articles there. They'll help explain some of the differences. But essentially, they're going to cap the layout shift windows at 5 seconds, which for most sites doesn't change the CLS score, but it does help more accurately reflect the user experience on longer lived pages.
Gotcha. Yeah, that makes perfect sense. I'll also back that up. Web.dev is a great resource for learning about core web vitals in general, and most things that you'd like to learn around, like what they are. So thanks for the shout out to a great resource. That makes perfect sense. That's awesome. Okay, so I'll move on to the next one too. This says, is Web Vitals a standard yet? And can Web Vitals provide accurate and precise data for single page applications?
Is it a standard yet? I believe everyone is definitely looking at the current core Web Vitals. I believe Search's announcement has helped solidify everyone consolidating around this. But again, we feel that this is really good for those user-centric definitions and metrics that help you focus on what the users need the most. Single page applications are tricky. I'm sure anyone who has tried to measure performance on single page applications understands like the challenge that's there. So again, if you go to web.dev, you'll see some of the thoughts that are being done on post-load performance. And you'll be able to see some of the ideas being thrown around there. And there's also a call and a request for feedback. So if you have some brilliant ideas on how to measure these better, we'd love to hear from you. And so I'd recommend looking at those and let us hear your feedback.
Ooh, that sounds awesome. Yeah, definitely reach out and help make the excuse me, help make this process better continually. Very thankful to have all of this, all these questions answered that we have today, and to hear from you and to understand the impact of Core Web Vitals more. It's really, it's actually very exciting to see, you know, as a part of the search results, you know, that like it plays such a significant impact that it's, you know, it's going to factor into that moving forward. And yeah, just thankful to hear a lot of the details around that. So thank you so much, Melissa. Wonderful to have you with us today. And yeah, we look forward to seeing you again in the future.
Thank you for having me.
Yay. All right. So that was awesome. We are going to move along. So just remember that if you have any questions for Melissa or for anybody that's speaking today, you can put them in the Q&A box that we have available for you. Please feel free to ask any questions that you might have. So now I am excited to introduce Cosme Sevestre, and he is a senior product manager here at Datadog. And he will be walking us through how to add synthetic monitoring to your CI flow so that you can ensure that your critical user journeys are being experienced the same way across the globe. So thank you for joining us, Cosme. Excited to have you here.
All right, thank you, Ben. So as Ben said, I'm Cosme Sevestre, part of the product management team here at Datadog. And again, don't hesitate to post any questions in the Q&A chat so that the staff on hand can actually answer while we go through the talk. And today, as mentioned, we're going to talk about using synthetics in continuous integration and deployment delivery. Properly testing and monitoring your applications to optimize both business availability and pace of innovation is hard. We've seen several challenges people face when implementing end-to-end or integration testing. First of all, testing is everywhere throughout the lifecycle of your application. Everyone is involved, and different teams often implement different testing suites for the same flows and features, resulting in duplicated work, and in many cases, partial coverage of key use cases. Sharing best practices and test suites between these teams is easy, as tools used by each function can be different and tests cannot easily be reused. Second, creating tests can be time-consuming and usually requires to write even more code after you're done writing your application. It may end up being a lower priority or not even done as teams move on to the next feature. Some teams sometimes also don't have the time to learn the skill set and set up the necessary tools, ending up with no partial coverage. And finally, tests can often break due to small and unrelated changes made by other teams on nearby features when the existing functionality stays the same. Having to maintain tests for what should be non-breaking changes is time-consuming, and in the meantime, failing tests can create lots of confusion and stress for all involved. So today we want to present how we solve these problems with synthetic testing and monitoring. So let's look at synthetic testing and monitoring. Synthetic tests help you cover key user flows and API with API and browser test. API test can cover all your application layers as well as API flows. Browser tests are created by using the web application you built with a GUI-based recorder that makes it easy to record steps and create assertions along the way. So you're not coding against a hypothetical flow, you're experiencing, testing, and recording it at the same time. All you need is a browser plugin to get started. There's also built-in intelligence to reduce false negatives and adapt to non-breaking changes, such as moving links around, style, or text changes, so that logging in still logs in. Now, this test can run on your dev environment, staging, QA, CI environments using our CI integration package. This test can also run on a variety of browsers and device types, ensuring you are covering as many use cases as possible. So that's for the testing world, before features are released to production, and we'll dive into more details in a minute. But this test can also be reused to monitor your production environment, running them from different locations around the world, as well as from private locations. These private locations can bring you additional vantage points into private networks or be used to extend geo coverage. Once these are set up, you can leverage proactive monitoring and alerting features. When it comes to fixing issues, full stack correlation brings you all the data you need from application monitoring, APM, and you can see a flame graph here of all your backend services on the right-hand side, your logs, network performance monitoring, security, code profiling, real user monitoring data, etc. It's all at your fingertip to pinpoint the root cause as quickly as possible. This is where our synthetic solution originally started, in the monitoring world. And now we're enabling you to use the same synthetic testing in your CI/CD pipelines and at development time. By combining our two suites of tests, you can cover every flow and action, every endpoint, every layer of your application during the entire development lifecycle. Of course, not all tests will be relevant in all stages, but you can choose from a common test suite and contribute as well. Whether you started building your synthetic test suite from the monitoring world or the testing of your application upstream, reusing synthetic tests in your CI/CD piece is a powerful way to create a safety net for your business. This way, your engineering team can focus on building new features, and you can reduce critical bugs shipping to production. When it still happens, as we just mentioned, you have the tools to monitor and be notified, as well as a way to find the root cause as quickly as possible. So how do we do that? Specifically in the CI. We have a package CLI that enables you to easily integrate with your CI/CD and define groups of tests to run. Based on the results, you can make decisions in your pipeline. Overriding parameters in those tests can help you point to the right environments, so you can run them on ephemeral environments, staging, pre-pod, canaries, anything you want. By running those tests, you can block further deployment of branches in case of a problem that would otherwise break production. The CLI can also be used during development, which we'll explain in a minute. Here, you can see the output of tests running in a GitLab pipeline. On this one, you can see the results of tests running in GitHub Actions, where a build and deploy steps have been defined with the final testing phase with 3 groups of tests for signups, user profile, and the checkout flow. The checkout flow test failed and will prevent further deployment of this build. Now we're looking at the test details page on Datadog, where you can see that it's possible to quickly override the CI execution parameters so that in case a test is blocking a more important update, it can temporarily be set as non-blocking or entirely skipped. These integrations with your CI/CD are very powerful, and they're used today by customers, and they're heavily used internally at Datadog. And today we're happy to announce 4 new features to continue to help you on this journey. First, we wanted to ensure you can test on the same browsers your users are accessing your application with, and not just the one you use. We started with Chrome and have recently announced the general availability of both Firefox and Edge, with more to come. We also have i11 in private beta for those dealing with legacy applications or setups, but we also continue to invest in the future, so stay tuned for more. We're also excited to announce our new CI Results Explorer. Previously, while you could run the same test in different environments, there was no central place in the Datadog UI to isolate tests running in your CI/CD or dev environments. The Result Explorer that you can see here on the top nav bar is a dedicated UI, putting these front and center, allowing you to analyze 100% of your tests running in the CI in one central location and track their progress over time. You can also easily drill down on a CI job execution to identify and troubleshoot failing test results. We also just released CI tunneling, which enables you to run synthetic tests within your own environment with no setup. It creates a temporary secure channel back to Datadog to drive execution of chosen scenarios. This enables anyone in the organization to run tests without requiring extra permissions or custom setup to get started. This includes running the same test directly in your development environment by overriding the parameters and URLs that you're pointing to. Now, CI tunneling is perfect for quickly getting started and for developers, but for users who want to scale even more and not only do feature testing, but also keep an eye on your application's performance, like the Core Web Vitals Melissa mentioned earlier, where you have two Core Web Vitals, LCP and CLS, that can be measured as a lab metric as well as a field metric. Here you can have a benchmark on LCP and CLS in a controlled environment and check their evolution over time. So this is one thing you can do, for example, with our private location. And for those situations, we do recommend using them. And those are locations you can host on your own infrastructure. We will soon release an out-of-the-box private location monitoring within Datadog, so you can better manage your private locations fleet. It will enable you to keep an eye on your overall health of your private location, as well as get alerts if an instance goes down or is unreachable, track under-provisioned private locations that are running too many tests and underperforming, and releases of new private location image versions. So let's recap how testing everywhere with Datadog Synthetic can help. First, by sharing test suites across teams. Second, with an easy to use, as GJ mentioned, simple but powerful at the same time, GUI test creation, you use your application to create tests. Reduce breakage with built-in resilience. The ability to block deployment with CI/CD integration. Cross-browser testing to cover all of your customers' use cases. And finally, dedicated UI with the CI Result Explorer, CI tunneling for ease of use and getting started, and finally, scaling up in performance with private location monitoring. All right, thank you.
Hey, thank you, Colin. That was wonderful. Thank you for giving us such insight into what's going on with the CI and in synthetics and all that. We are super excited for all sorts of things coming up there. So thanks for a wonderful talk. Yeah, and next I'd like to turn it over to, I'd like to welcome Danny Fallon. Not Jimmy, Danny, and he's a brilliant software engineer who comes to us from Intercom, and he's going to give us insight into how synthetics helped his team ship better and safer deployments. So thank you for joining us, Danny. Excited to have you here. I'll turn it over to you.
Great. Okay, cool. Let's get started. My name is Danny Fallon. I'm a senior engineer at Intercom, and I've been at Intercom for over 7 years and currently work with one of our infrastructure teams on everything from velocity engineering to availability. And I'm going to talk today about shipping the monolith and how we use synthetics for better, safer deployments. So first up, you might be asking yourself, what's Intercom? Well, Intercom is a customer communication platform with the mission to make internet business personal. So we achieve our mission by building software that helps businesses communicate with their customers personally and at scale. So we build solutions across 3 main buckets that help businesses drive growth at every stage of the customer lifecycle: support to build customer loyalty with real-time person support, smart automations, self-service; engagement, which creates better customer relationships through better onboarding and re-engagement; and then marketing to help businesses close deals faster by connecting their website visitors with sales in real time and qualifying leads. So now that you're an expert in what Intercom does, let's look under the hood and talk a bit more about how Intercom is built. So in 2011, Intercom started with a Rails app. And one of our engineering values is to be technically conservative. So even today, the heart of Intercom is a large Rails monolith that we use to serve between 40 and 60,000 requests per second at peak. So there's plenty of ancillary services like our Go-based WebSocket service that looks after real-time updates for conversations. But for today, the real ones of interest are the monolith here in the gray box, the Ember app, the teammate app, and the messenger, which is just above it there. And so Intercom's Rails monolith has grown to over 1.5 million lines of code. The app is the guts of Intercom, and basically everything is modeled here and almost everything touches it. So despite the intimidating size, we lean very heavily on a few AWS primitives, EC2, S3, SQS, Aurora, Dynamo, and Friends, because we actively choose to run less software and we choose boring technology. Observability is a key challenge for the monolith. So to help us with that and enforce some boundaries, it's deployed on many autoscaling groups, which are segmented by traffic shape and purpose. With over 58,000 unit tests and a combined test running time of 13 hours, keeping things moving is also a bit of a challenge. Internally known as Embercom, the teammate app is the primary management tool for Intercom. It's what both we and our customers' employees use on a daily basis to deliver their personal communication experience. It's been a separate Ember.js app since 2014 and makes heavy use of Octane and Tailwind. The monolith chooses the version of Ember to load initially, and once it's loaded, everything after that is done through a JSON API that's powered by a dedicated autoscaling group running the monolith. And the messenger is Intercom's most visible asset, responsible for millions of interactions per day. It's a React app built with Redux, Flow, and Emotion that we serve via a CloudFront distribution. Customers embed a snippet of JavaScript in their pages, which loads the messenger in an iframe on their site. Like Embercom, the messenger is backed by its own dedicated autoscaling group running the monolith. So now you know about Intercom, you have an idea about what we built. Let's talk about shipping Intercom. So we ship upwards of 40 changes per day, generally between 9 a.m. and 6 p.m. Dublin time, except for that company week off there at the start of July. We can maybe ignore that. The monolith shown here in purple on the bottom of the bars is the majority of our shipping, with Embercom, which is light blue at the top of each bar, coming in second place. Given the cadence and our architecture, there are various challenges to shipping. Speed is always a challenge. We ship a lot in the 9 hours of a workday, and so if deploys take longer, then changes will be batched and deployed together. And that makes it harder to figure out a suspect change if things go bad. And it also makes it harder to roll back, since we might be rolling back many changes. Speaking of rollbacks, the blast radius of the monolith is still quite large. Even though we try to mitigate this with different autoscaling groups to segment out, there are still shared data stores that can cause outages if they're impacted. So given that code rolled back, engineers also need to be cognizant changes must be backwards compatible for easy reverts. And so there are some particular challenges around our two front-end apps as well. The rollback speed of the Intercom messenger is highly dependent on our CDN and validation. And broken clients can remain open for a long time, since we can't force reload the app after it falls too far behind current releases or gets hot fixes. And that kind of goes for Embercom as well as the messenger. The key to shipping at Intercom is Muster. Muster is a Rails app initially built in 2012, and with apologies to all the front-end engineers here today, it hasn't seen a design update since then either. Its primary purpose is to deploy applications, and every engineer at Intercom has access to it. It orchestrates every commit for an application through a pipeline. So every app gets a build stage whose primary responsibility is to build a deployable asset. And then subsequent stages are defined on a per app basis, and they're responsible for getting that asset to our users. In between stages, we have the ability to add custom checkpoints and decide whether we should proceed to the next one or stop. So now that you have a rough glimpse of Muster, let's describe the flow for our Intercom monolith. Muster will take a push webhook from GitHub and kicks off a build. And the outcome here is a deployable Rails tarball with our application code uploaded into S3. And then Intercom is an EC2 app. So the subsequent stages represent groups of autoscaling groups. So we deployed to 2 of them in parallel. Staging, which is used by external tools like Salesforce development and other environments that need a separate Intercom. And then prod system test, which is our canary effectively, that runs within our production environment. It's connected to our production data stores, but it doesn't take any customer traffic. After deploying to both of these is finished, a series of approvals are run to decide, is this good enough to go? So we set up our CI here to ensure that we don't get code to production without CI passing, but we also verify that the build successfully deployed and works by firing off more checks and assessing if they complete against staging and our canary. So once everything looks good, we deploy to production, and that deploys in parallel to over 300 autoscale groups. Shipping for the Embercom front end is similar but different in that the deployments aren't causing anything to happen on EC2 instances, but instead are hooked into external services. So building the Embercom app produces a manifest file of fingerprinted artifacts and uploads those fingerprinted artifacts to S3. And then an API is request made into the monolith over a private API, which uploads this manifest file, this kind of mapping that you see here. And then in parallel, Muster will also wait for our CI to pass. So for a deployment of a front end, Muster sends a request to the monolith to enable the new manifest file as the active version of our team main app. And at this point, we'll run some approval tests to verify that this new version of Embercom is good enough and is ready for production before deploying to production, which again is a private API call, this time to the monolith's production environment to tell it, hey, this is the active version now. The revision database in the monolith holds the manifest of all of our previous releases. So a rollback is basically a reverse of a deploy. So it's a simple API call from Muster into the monolith to revert and turn off the current version and go back to an older release. All of these assets are always in S3, so we can roll back pretty quickly. The scale of the messenger, unfortunately, doesn't allow us to use this pattern for picking which version of the Intercom messenger a customer's customer will see. So instead there, as part of our deployment process, we will overwrite some files in S3, and then we'll have to initiate an invalidation on our CDN in order to bring that code into service. So at Intercom, we believe that time to production is a core metric. So a key R&D principle at Intercom is to think big, start small, and learn fast. So we build and iterate to successful customer outcomes. Our SVP of engineering, Dara Curran, put it when he said, software only becomes valuable when you ship it to customers. Before then, it's a costly accumulation of hard work and assumptions. So in keeping with this philosophy, the time to production is a core metric at Intercom. Shipping fast builds organizational momentum, delights our customers. And if shipping is a continuous and fast non-event, then that keeps the risk of getting something wrong low, and keeps engineers focused and encourages them to keep building in those small steps. So after cyclical efforts over many years where our deploy times are really bad, and then we'd hurry up and then we'd get them back to acceptable. And so the cycle went until we met with engineering leaders and we agreed to set a service level objective for our deployment time. So we set an ambitious target of 10 minutes from commit to deploy for P95. And at the time, no deployment of Intercom took less than 15 minutes and the P95 was above 32. So for it to be a core metric, it's important that we review it regularly and we fold work on this into roles. If you're missing other core metrics like your ARR, your monthly active users, whatever your business's core metrics are. We review ours on a weekly cadence and as part of overall operational health. As you can see from a recent review, we're still off the ultimate SLO for deploys, but work continues on re-architecting our deploy system, the monolith, and our AWS architecture to make our SLO a reality. So if we deploy it fast, we can break it fast. And working in a monolith, sometimes even the most well-intentioned change can affect something that you didn't intend to. So in combination with Canary deploys, we use Datadog synthetics during deployment at Intercom. What we're really looking for with testing is confidence that a particular change won't break your application for customers. That's ultimately what we're all concerned about, our users' experience, because that's what really matters. So while we leverage unit and integration tests to build confidence, we also believe it's critically important to test with Datadog synthetics to give us confidence that our users' experience is good. We've got a suite of over 150 synthetics, from the simple things like, can we log in? Is the messenger functional? Can we open it? To more complex things like loading the Intercom's inbox, creating and setting a custom bot live, or setting a message campaign live. And so one of the approval checks between pre-production and full production that Muster uses is it uses the Datadog CI package to trigger a suite of synthetics based on the tags. So if we want a synthetic to run during CD, we simply tag it with the name of the Muster application, and it'll be picked up for the next time that we run this approval check. So for the monolith, running the suite's pretty simple. The test's start URL points at the Canary's public URL, and that has the release that we're looking to promote and approve to production. All tests run against the pre-release monolith and the currently in production version of our front end Embercom. For Embercom, it's a little different in that we need to pass in the revision of Embercom that we want to test as a variable, or a parameter. So this causes the monolith to load the pre-release version of Embercom and not the in production version. And so we want to test the pre-release version. And so this is how we achieve it. And we use a very similar tactic for the messenger where we directly load the asset into our tests rather than accept the one directly from production. And so great, this is perfect. But despite all of this, things go wrong. Bad releases make it out from time to time. So let's take a look at a recent example of when that happened. So the canary can catch a lot of things from egregious breakages right down to really subtle ones, but it's got some blind spots too. One of the things canaries struggle with are the outages that are caused by scale. So this example here comes from June 21st, which was a Rails patch upgrade. The change passed our CI/CD checks. Once it landed out in full production, it caused our sharded data stores to begin to struggle and eventually be overwhelmed. Around the same time, our scheduled synthetics began to fail, like this one for the messenger's basic opening and usability. And it began notifying product owners about there being a potential issue. The engineer responsible for the change noticed the issue separately and initiated a rollback in our muster application. So to roll back, the engineer went to muster, chose from the most recent 25 releases and pushed the rollback to this release button. Muster immediately cancels any deployment that's in progress, locks the pipeline to the old release, and deploys the old release. In this particular instance, we were fully recovered 5 minutes after rollback and had around 10 minutes of total impact. With a complicated rollback procedure or a larger time to deploy, we would have had a much slower time to recovery and a worse customer experience. So we don't want a future where we ship less because we build larger features. We don't want to ship more batched up changes because shipping might be slow. And if we don't actively fight against this, that's where we'll end up. So here's a rough idea of what's next for us. First up, we want to hit our improved deployment times. We're not hitting our P95 SLO, so our next target is P75 at the SLO time at 10 minutes. And then we can reassess if this is the right thing for our stage of business and whether we should push on for P95. Automatic rollbacks. We can leverage muster to checkpoint a production release after it hits production, maybe leveraging Datadog metrics and synthetics, and then automatically revert to a previous release if things don't look good. We definitely don't have full coverage of every product's critical workflows in synthetics. We don't quite analyze our outages and think about how synthetics might have caught them just yet. So that's something for us to work on. And towards the tail end, we've got the broken front end clients that can hang around for a while because they could be on a tab from Monday to Friday. So having a user-friendly mechanism to reload these on new release could improve the speed of adoption and kind of get fixes to customers quicker. And then the last thing is, of course, we need to plan for growth. We'll have more engineers next year than we do now, and more again the year after that. That's more commits squashed into that 9 to 6 window and more releases. And so with a bit of forward planning, we think we can get the jump on significant changes needed to keep our SLOs at these increased volumes. And so I wouldn't be doing my job if I didn't end by telling you that Intercom is hiring, in particular in R&D, so product design and engineering. And so if what I've talked about here, the products themselves or the challenges of a growing org sounds like fun, we'd love to hear you. But for now, that's all I have. I hope you found it interesting that you leverage the power of synthetics in your CI/CD pipeline to enable shipping fast and with confidence. Thank you, and I'll leave it over to Ben for Q&A.
Thank you, Danny. Wow, that was so amazing and so informative and just, wow, so solid. Thank you for putting that together for us. I really appreciate it. It was really impressive to hear that your team ships around 40 changes per day. That is amazing for a monolith, number one. Number two, that it only takes you 5 minutes to completely roll back the changes after after the process, and then you're hitting all your SLOs with like super accuracy. So like all the just hearing the outcomes in and of themselves and how you got through that was amazing. So thank you for helping us get through that. I'm just gonna yeah, great job. I'm just gonna give you a couple questions here that I have. So the first one was, what has been your biggest challenge in instrumenting observability into Intercom's Rails monolith? What's been the biggest challenge?
Cool. The biggest challenge at the moment is scale. So we've got like over 1,000 EC2 instances sending metrics, and so over years we've built a load of dashboards and a load of older metrics and all this kind of stuff. And so trying to evolve that over time, where people have relied on it for years, is probably our biggest challenge. So we have an observability strategy that we're trying to realize now, where we maybe look more towards more APM, more tracing, away from like logging and that kind of stuff. And those are like our biggest challenges, is just the sheer scale of this, the number of engineers who need this data. And so yeah, that would be our biggest challenge.
Man, that's amazing. Hey, so with that challenge, what teams that you're working with are responsible for building and improving Muster? And then how has that project grown over time as your scale has grown?
Right. So yeah, Muster's observability is interesting. It's definitely a second tier application when compared to the Monolith. I think the Monolith is king here. But in terms of the teams, we have all of our infrastructure teams. There's also another team who have been working steadily on our observability strategy, and so they're the ones who are so a couple of members of my team and of the other team who are pushing forward this kind of step change in Intercom stuff. So I don't think that might answer your question, but if I didn't, please pin me on it again.
100%. No, that was great. And I think, just as a reminder to anybody in the audience, please feel free to ask Danny questions in the chat if we don't get to yours, and and we'll get back to you. No, that was great. I'll move on to the next one though. So number 3 was, what would a developer need to have in place to achieve automatic rollbacks? Like, what's a general scope of what you need to have in place?
Oh wow, I'm caught. I'm being caught here now. This one was proposed only on June 21st. We've talked about it for a very long time though, about how sometimes even the simplest changes can somehow squirrel their way all the way through our pipes and immediately take down the monolith. And we're like, how did that happen? And you look at it, you're like, how did we not catch this? And so I think some of the interesting things would be, we need teams to have core flows. So we need their core flows modeled in synthetics. We need their core metrics. We need to then have the ability to, for Muster, I suppose, to check these things and say, yep, everything looks great, it's all green, or I don't know, one of these products doesn't look great now. And maybe some there's some advanced features there, like even anomaly detection that like kind of picks it up before we go into like full outage mode. And so that's kind of direction that I think that will go. But watch this space. I might be back giving a talk about how we implemented automatic rollbacks at some event in the future.
Absolutely, we'd love to have you back anytime. And either way, can't wait to hear more about that in the future from you and how that develops and progresses. That's awesome. Yeah, that was great. I'll get to the last question here too that we have. How many engineers does Intercom have in their working on their monorepo? And are there any plans for breaking up the monolith?
Right. I can answer the second question first and the first one second. Are there any plans to break up the monolith? Absolutely not. No. We are all in on the monolith, like where it makes business sense. For example, it doesn't make sense for Rails to be handling millions and millions of WebSockets. I don't care how good the Rails solution for WebSockets is. It's not that good. And so we initially rolled it out in Java, and then we rolled it out in Go, because that's more performant and saved us a ton of money as well. So where it makes business sense, we won't build in the monolith, but we've got cases where we build something outside the monolith that we're now looking to put in the monolith as well, because the boundary doesn't make sense. Like it kind of muddies the water. You've got these weird private APIs you need to change two things: the the monolith, and then the external app. And so we have the reverse as well as so it's generally speaking, unless you got a really good use case, you build it at least in the beginning inside the monolith. And I really don't think that our monolith is going to be split up into microservices anytime soon. And so how many engineers then, really quickly, there's over 100. So I don't know the exact number, but over 100 engineers at Intercom working day in, day out, predominantly on the monolith and Embercom.
Man, great answers to those questions. Yeah, that's really, really impressive. The product has just been so impressive over time too, and wonderful work, Danny. Wonderful job, telling us how it's grown over time. And yeah, just I guess that's all the questions we have, and we're just very thankful to have you. Can't wait to have you back again in the future. And thanks again. Do you have any like if anybody wants to follow you on Twitter or anything like that? Yeah.
Yeah, it's twitter.com/touchingvirus. So you can just TOUCHINGVIRUS. I'll throw it into the chat. And if you want to reach me on Intercom, it's Danny@intercom.io.
Awesome. Thanks, Danny.
Great. Super.
Yeah. We'll see you next time.
Thanks.
All right. Well, now we're going to move along to Priyanshi. Would like to welcome Priyanshi Gupta. She is a product manager here at Datadog, and she's focusing on real user monitoring. And she is going to help us understand how using real user monitoring in your development cycle can fundamentally improve the user experience of your web apps. So very thankful to have Priyanshi here, and yeah, I'll hand it over to you.
Hey, hi. So today I'm excited to talk about improving user experience with the Datadog Real User Monitoring, and also to announce powerful new features that can help you deliver the best possible experience to your users. First of all, let's consider what is the cost of a bad experience to your users. So 40% of your users will abandon your app if it takes more than 3 seconds to load. 86% will quit doing business with the company after having a negative experience. And even if they don't tell you, 91% of non-complainers just leave. And 13% of them even tell 15 people how bad it was. So monitoring is critical. It's very important. And for front-end and mobile developers, there are certain major pain points that we have identified. To start with performance, it can be difficult to understand where the performance bottlenecks are occurring in your application. Is your app loading slowly because of an issue in your front-end code or your back-end code? Is the size of your application slowing things down? Do you have a silent app hang? A simple issue can be impossible to tackle when you have multiple blind spots across your stack. And applications are bound to have errors. As more and more users interact with your application, it can get overwhelming trying to triage every error effectively. Which error is impacting most users? Where should the engineering efforts be directed first? Which errors are not non-critical and can be resolved later? When you don't have like a data-driven error workflow, you're bound to run into developer frustration, disorganization, and poor user experience. When users reach out to you for support, your team cannot zero in on what's happening in their specific session. Non-technical team members have to rely on engineers to help them fix basic problems. When support requests pile up, it leads to even more frustration and a longer wait for the user. And finally, you can't make data-driven product and design decisions if you don't have access to your user behavior data. You have to rely on gut decisions to drive your product forward, which can be a hit or miss. It can be hard to ask for resources when you don't have the data to show why you need them. Different roles can be working with similar data with different tools, which leads to communication silos. And that is where Datadog RAM comes in. While you already saw how to build a robust application with synthetic testing, real user monitoring allows you to get ahead of the bugs before users even complain, providing you observability in production. In the last 2 years since we've launched Datadog RAM, we have gained trust with thousands of customers. We have users at Zendesk, at Dollar Shave Club, at Instacart using Datadog RAM, even at your company probably. To start with performance and how Datadog RAM solves the use cases that we just discussed, measuring performance from the perspective of users enables you to fix user impacting issues. For web apps, Datadog provides core web vitals for every user session that we collect. As Melissa already mentioned earlier today, these metrics, first input delay, CLS, are important and have been identified by Google as a standard. They provide unified guidance for quality signals that are essential for delivering a great user experience on the web. You can understand the experience your users are having from an aggregated as well as a per user session basis with Datadog RAM. And if there are any issues where one of these metrics is not doing well, Datadog also provides you visibility from front end to back end and infrastructure to actually understand the root cause of the problem. You can understand exactly where the latency is stemming from, whether it's front end code or back end code, the network, the infrastructure, or whatever is the bottleneck. Moving on, effective error tracking allows you to triage, prioritize, and resolve errors quickly allowing you to get ahead of the bugs. Datadog error tracking intelligently aggregates any front-end errors into issues. So you don't have to waste time sifting through like large amount of data. Instead, you can prioritize issues with custom alerting and quickly identify the root cause of an error down to the line of code in GitHub. In addition, if the error is not caused by front-end code, you can easily pivot into backend traces with application performance monitoring, APM, and take care of issues across the stack. Accessing user session data also allows your non-technical support roles to solve issues on their own. Datadog makes it easy to scope down to a specific user session with the help of facets and attributes. There's no need to learn a query language, so it's easily accessible to non-technical users. This can be particularly helpful if support roles in your organization need help of engineers to solve non-technical problems. Using session timeline and granularity, you can identify where in the user's journey a problem occurred. In addition, you can share relevant context with other teams. In event of unnecessary escalation, you have full visibility across the stack, and everyone at your organization, your SREs, your engineers, your DevOps, can use a single platform and speak basically the same language. Finally, Datadog RAM gives you the user behavior data you need to make data-driven decisions. RAM automatically collects any user actions taken on your applications. This allows front-end or mobile developers to install our SDK and immediately get visibility into the clicks, taps, swipes users completed in their sessions. With the included session dashboard and geomap, you can understand how users are interacting with your newly released features from beginning to the end of their journey. You can also add custom attributes like a marketing campaign, ID or promo code, someone used at checkout to every user session to track the effectiveness of your marketing. And this opens a dialogue across your teams in the organization so you can work together to deliver the best possible user experience. Everything I've spoken about so far sets up a strong foundation for Datadog RAM. But we didn't stop there. Let's take a look at some of the challenges of maintaining modern web and mobile applications and some features that we are launching to address them. Some of the most common challenges with monitoring user sessions front-end developers face are that there's a lack of visibility between user actions. For example, what happens when a user clicks into a page and clicks on adding to the cart button? It can also be hard to reproduce errors when you don't have all the context of what the user is experiencing. Unless you're sitting next to your user looking over their shoulder, how often are you to miss information to help you reproduce an error? And if multiple people are working to help the same user, they might be using different tools and can get stuck talking about the same problems using different languages. In response to these challenges, I'm excited to announce that Datadog Session Replay is now in public beta. With Session Replay, you're able to view user behavior. So don't just see the actions, see the behavior in between the actions. You don't need to reproduce errors. You can understand how users triggered those errors by seeing their mouse movements and clicks. You get qualitative feedback, see what users are doing before and after taking an action. That's like dropping off a funnel, for example. And you can pivot across sessions, errors, issues, and aggregated user behavior in one unified platform. There's no query language, which makes filtering accessible to everyone, from your front-end devs to your support to product design, marketing teams. Let's see how it looks like in action. So what you see here is a replay of a user session. It just looks like a video with playback options, so you can exactly know what the user was doing, even between the recorded sessions. On the right-hand side, you can also see a list of each event that occurred during this session. Session replay can also give you insight into why users might be dropping off your website. In this recording, you can see a user tried entering an invalid cookie code, and that's when they saw it didn't work and they decided to leave the application. With Datadog error tracking, as I mentioned, similar errors are grouped together into issues, which makes it easier for you to prioritize and resolve errors that can impact your users. In this screen, you can see how to pivot from an issue to the replay of an individual user session connected to that issue in just one click. Moving on to mobile monitoring. One of the biggest pain points we have identified in mobile development, hearing from multiple mobile users, is a lack of visibility into the application's performance. Some of the challenges include being unable to monitor when the app is reliable and stable, a lack of visibility into UI perceptiveness of app rendering speed, if there's a rage click, if there's a frozen frame, or the app was silently killed by the OS, and being blind to how much device, memory, CPU cycles, battery is being used by your application, because it might be impacting the entire device health. That's why we are developing Mobile Vitals. Not only will you be able to monitor these key metrics, you will also get in-app guidance to improve your application based on industry-wide benchmarks for reliability, performance, and power consumption. With Datadog Mobile Vitals, you will be able to track reliability metrics down to the screen level, like sessions with crashes, application not responding, or your app hangs, out of memory leaks. For power consumption, Datadog Mobile Vitals give you granular per screen visibility into battery usage, CPU usage, memory usage by specific screens in your complete application. For performance, you can easily monitor UI frame rendering rate, frozen app screens, app startup time, cold, warm, hot startup time, so on and so forth. So this is exciting. And on the screen, you can see Datadog Mobile Vitals, including frames per second, memory consumption, and CPU utilization. You can quickly identify the vitals along the timeline with our performance waterfall minimap. Here you can see our two, Here you can see our two frozen frames and a fatal error or crash occurred. Moving on, as you might be already aware, Datadogram is already available for JavaScript, web applications, iOS, and Android for mobile applications. But now, as we have often heard from our users, React Native is one of the most popular frameworks for building mobile applications by web experienced users. It allows web developers to use what they know about React.js library and create native iOS and Android applications. However, this framework doesn't come without challenges. It's difficult to monitor critical performance data. Like if the error happens, is it happening on my JavaScript code or my native exception? What is the startup time of my application? What is the real-time data that I can zero in to understand the user behavior? And that is why we are excited to announce general availability of Datadog support for React Native monitoring. You can understand your JavaScript and native crash reports. You will get an error trend happening over time across your different versions and across your different screens. You also get performance vitals. You get real-time data and custom user attributes and much more. This allows you to make data-driven business decisions with insight into user behavior, demographics, your usage, and churn metrics. You can easily visualize metrics with Datadog's included dashboards, so getting set up is quick and painless. And finally, you can correlate data across stack in Datadog's single unified platform. So what you see here is at the React Native user session. You have access to granular session data, including the device, location, and username. You can also see how long it took the application to respond to each user's action, and even look at the related backend trace with APM using a single click. Here, we are looking at a React Native error. Again, you can see the device, location, username, view name linked to this error. Below that, you have the error detail in JavaScript that can tell us what is going on and what is the specific line of code that you need to correct to get rid of this error. To recap, Session Replay and Mobile Vitals are now in beta, and React Native monitoring is generally available. If you're interested, we will be sharing the link to sign up for a free 14-day trial of Datadogram in the chat. We'll also be posting links on how to request access for Session Replay and Mobile Vitals beta in the chat. So do let us know. Thank you.
Thank you, Priyanshi. That was wonderful. Wow, man, there's so many exciting things coming down the pipeline. Just Session Replay is really, really big, like huge. Mobile Vitals is really, really big. The mobile run views, these new mobile run views and stuff that are coming out are so helpful with the timeline and being able to see things end to end. And React Native monitoring too. I mean, oh my gosh, that's a huge step. So that, having everything in one place is amazing. Thank you for a wonderful talk and helping us see what's ahead, because it's really, really exciting. Thank you, Priyanshi. Really appreciate it. All right. Yeah, we're going to keep moving along here. We have Brian Gates. Up next is an intriguing story from Brian. He's a senior front-end EM at the Dollar Shave Club. They're doing some really interesting work with Rum. He's going to talk about, he's going to introduce what real user monitoring as a general practice has done for his team's workflow, and has helped them gain a more direct influence into over their product, and bringing them much closer to their users. So we're really excited to have Brian here. He is awesome, and glad to see him here in his fish tank. So just kidding. All right.
Got my scuba gear.
Yeah,
how's
man.
it going?
Good. Thanks for coming.
Super excited about the announcements that Priyanshi just made. Oh my goodness. Very cool. So my name is Ryan Gates. Thank you all for coming out. Not coming, sitting in your house, wherever you are. Today I wanted to talk a little bit about my experience with Datadog Rum and give you guys a rundown of how it is that we use it. So first, a little context about who is Dollar Shave Club, if you haven't heard about the company. We disrupted the industry in 2011 by delivering great blades, an awesome price. If you haven't seen the YouTube video, it's hilarious. Go check it out. And since then, we've evolved to ship many more products to many countries, numerous countries, and as well just broadening our product as well. So a bit about me. My name is Brian Gates. I've been making websites go click since 2005. I'm a husband, father of 2 boys, and avid gamer. My current D&D character is Triutu, a lizard folk druid, and I love making and playing with software. So I think this requires a bit of context. We've been talking about Rum and why it's useful and all that stuff, but I think in order to really appreciate the need, we got to take a step back and realize where we come from and where we are now. So then it used to be that we just served websites with HTML and CSS, right? Like there was really kind of no front end, like it was markup and CSS, but it was all served by a back end. So there really wasn't much to do with the front end. But today, obviously, that story has changed. We have React, Redux, TypeScript, Babel, Webpack, CI, CD, SAS, Emotion, lazy loading, APIs, REST microservices, A/B test variations, content management systems, third-party integrations, tag managers. How do you make sure that it's all working? And then when it's not working, how do you figure out where the problem is? Well, keep calm, carry on. The answer is observability. So observability gives you the feedback you need to understand what your application is doing in the wild, for better and worse. And it gives you the feedback that you need as an engineer to own your work. In good times, as my friend Vince here encountered, we have been working on improving our core web vitals, as we heard about earlier, a cumulative layout shift times that your website will change its layout through the course of a rendering. Less is better. So Vince did some work. He was tasked with reducing some of our CLS on one of our most important pages. And then he said, and then he pushed out his commit and watched the web vitals in Datadog Rum. And he said, seeing the CLS drop off steeply like that, as soon as my PR was deployed, was a high I haven't felt in a while. So that really just empowers the engineer to fully understand the ramifications of the work that they're doing and see it firsthand the second it goes out. And seeing that feedback and feeling that is just a truly empowering feeling. But it also enables ownership in bad times. If you release a bug, you want to know sooner rather than later. You don't want to wait for issues to be reported, but then it's probably too late. You're impacting so many users. So you want to leverage monitoring and alerting to draw your attention to issues as they are arising, so that you can also bind that context to the original change that made it. So you can also leverage analytics to truly understand the impact of issues. Is this impacting one user, 2 users, 1,000? How many people is it really impacting? How important is this? And Datadog RUM will give you that insights and help you understand that. But beyond RUM, Datadog in general is a hub for all of your systems. So we like to empower not only our engineers, but our product team to be able to make changes and manage aspects of the website via our content management system, Contentful. But doing that with great power comes great responsibility and great ability to break the website sometimes. And so being able to correlate an error with its cause is super important. So having all of that context in one place is essential. And so we did this by leveraging Contentful's webhooks. They have really powerful webhook configurations so that each time a change is made, a webhook will be posted to Datadog's event stream API, and it'll post a new event. So this enables us to create dashboards with event stream overlays correlating the amount of errors that we're seeing across all of our sessions, along with the timeline of changes that are being made across the entire company and other departments. So it enables us as engineers to still own the stability of the website and quickly identify problems and be a good partner to our product team so that they don't feel too frightened to make changes with reckless abandon. So knowing that we can catch them quickly and resolve them quickly as well. So we had, when we first installed Datadog RUM back in end of Q4, we were shocked to find that we had nearly 4 errors per session. Today we've gotten to 0.3, so that's a huge change. And so how did we do that? We have, for one, a new triage process. We actually have it such that, as you're committing as an engineer, you introduce bugs. It's inevitable, right? It's just a matter of time. And these make it to the website. A user encounters that bug for the first time, and immediately the first time any user encounters it, we get an alert for a new user or for a new error. And then we have an on-call engineer that's standing by, and we'll see these errors and immediately begin triaging them. And in order to understand what the impact is this a severity 1? Is this a critical prod outage? Have we blocked our checkout funnel? Is it less important? Is it maybe just a JavaScript error that occurs in some edge cases of user experience? Figure out the impact really quickly with Datadog RUM analytics. And then if it, depending upon the importance, identify who was the one that introduced this to. So we understand that the particular commit SHA was the cause, right? So we can go back and say, who was the one that introduced that commit, bring that to them and say, hey, we're seeing this bug. Do you know what this might mean? If you've ever tried to debug an issue from like 6 months ago with absolutely no context into why the change was made, this is a huge difference, right? Like, oh yeah, I literally just pushed that commit out. I totally know what's going on with that, and I totally know what the problem is. Well, let me either revert it and then go back to the drawing board, or roll forward with a quick fix, So another tool that we have in our tool belt, or that we like to leverage, which is kind of neat, is leveraging A/B testing for the rollout of significant new features or services. And that can be risky, right? Like if this is what you're seeing here is a graph of web traffic distributed among 2 different experiences. The purple is our old cart service, and blue is the new cart service. So you could see early on, we had entirely the old experience, and we started gradually releasing this to a subset of our users. 5% the first day, ramping up to 10, et cetera, day by day. just getting real users in the system, hitting it. It's, our QA engineers are fantastic, but they cannot realistically be expected to hit every edge case. Certainly not at every hour of the day. Our users will, right? So this allows us to really get like grease in the cog, so to speak, to really understand how it's going to function out in the wild without risking 100% of our traffic, right? Like if our new service took down the checkout page and caused a critical prod outage, that's a huge impact of the business, right? Like that's a problem. So if we just release to a subset, you can analyze and understand the rate of errors and all these other things, other aspects to how that new service is actually going to behave in real world scenarios without risking 100% of your traffic. It also allows you to measure KPIs like rate of conversion, that kind of stuff. So what's next for us? Well, we're looking on continuing to iterate on our observability process, really. We want more integration with more monitors, more KPIs directly, tied to the business and tied to alerts and monitors to bring our attention to issues that are anomalies quickly. Always improving on our incident response, trying to get our time to acknowledgement and time to resolution down. Just saw that Datadog released incident metrics today, which is super cool. Excited about that as well. And then building in better feedback loops everywhere, right? We need to understand what our systems are doing in all aspects in a singular place and help us to keep the ship running, So thank you. We are hiring. So if you liked anything that you saw and are excited to work on something like this, please do reach out. Here's a QR code because we can't really click the link, so maybe you can scan it with your phone. We're looking for senior software engineers on the front end to help us with this. And thank you for taking the time to come out and listen to our changes and what we're working on. Any questions?
Ooh, yeah, we definitely have questions. Thank you, Brian. That was awesome, man. Really, really good. Really great to see into your process and how instrumenting observability has changed your way of thinking and just like has put your team on a new foot for being able to understand what's actually going on before it hits users, and like you said, catching it. Oh, I made that change. Well, we can roll that back, do something, change that before it goes. I mean, just that's really, really powerful. Yeah, definitely have a few questions for you. I have some of my own, but we have other ones here first, so maybe I'll ask those. Oh, by the way, man, going from 3 errors to per session to 0.3, insane. That's amazing.
Right?
So,
It's
yeah,
incredible.
really great. So hey, question number 1 is, how long does it take to do a rollback from a bad deploy?
That's a good question. We are at about 15 minutes, and that's something that we're looking to target and get down as well. That's a huge part, and that's part of the reason why we do like to leverage other aspects too, of like A/B testing. So we're not actually needing to deploy a whole new app in order to see those changes realized. We can just flip a switch and enable or disable a feature in a quicker timeline.
Yeah, absolutely. Hey, really quickly, would you mind displaying that QR code again?
Yeah, absolutely. Oh, sorry, that's a great idea. I should keep that up.
No problem. No problem at all. Yeah, actually, someone else had the same question I did. The question was, hey, when your A/B testing shows that there's a problem, how do you decide where traffic should go, and then what's the process for rolling out that change?
That's a great question, and that's largely informed by analytics, right? Like you got to understand how severe the impact is. So if it's, again, just affecting 1 or 2 users and some edge cases, maybe it's fine and we can just roll forward with a fix, right? Maybe we could get an engineer on it and fix it within the next day or so. But obviously if it's impacting, 100% of traffic or more or in a severe way and preventing them from using the site in some significant way, then we can, again, just turn that switch back to the old experience. And then there we go. They're back on that, and they don't reduce the impact pretty quickly.
Yeah, that's awesome. Yeah, they don't have to think about anything or worry about anything.
Exactly.
That's awesome. Hey, so we'll move on to the next question, and that is, how are you communicating outages caused by other teams? And do you ask them to fix things, or what do you ask them to fix? Like,
Yeah, absolutely.
QA, and how does that process work?
Absolutely. So we have a stakeholder broadcast system. So I mean, when we do encounter an issue, we immediately inform all the people that are responsible for making decisions as far as like marketing and stuff like that. So if it is an issue that is going to last some period of time, we can cut marketing spend so that we're not sending people to a broken website. That hasn't happened in a while, given how quickly we can roll back now. Like we've really refined our process and kind of mitigated the risk that doesn't really happen that often. But in the case where, for example, a product owner does introduce a change that it causes a breakage, our engineering team and product teams work very closely on a regular basis. So it's just a simple fact of like DMing them on Slack and being like, you broke crap. No, not really, but like, 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 hey, I noticed you made this change. It looks like it's causing issues. Can we either roll it back or roll forward with a fix? We'll provide some sort of path forward, right? Like either way, back or forward with a change, whatever seems to make the most sense in the current context.
Yeah, that makes sense. It's great that you have that kind of a close relationship with the other teams and are able to roll things back if you need to, or tell them exactly what needs to happen because you have visibility there. That's great.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, finding like that's the hardest part, right? Like understanding what caused the problem, who can I talk to about where, like why it was changed and what the important significance of that change is and what our options are. Like the sooner you can close that loop and be able to connect the people that are capable of making the fixes and understanding what the context of the problem is, the quicker you can resolve it and help your customers out.
Yeah, and not only is it, I mean, customers, and not only is it exciting for you and your team to be able to do that, it's just like I mean, even intrinsically, it like saves money, and time,
exactly.
Going out the gate or whatever. So that's awesome.
You're just bleeding money the whole time while you're sitting there trying to figure out like
it's just shortening that window. So that's awesome, man. Hey,
you do.
So I'll just ask a couple more here. Let's see. What comprises the most valuable information to understand about your users when you're testing a new service? And and then like, how do you choose a subset when you're like A/B testing? And what kind of information are you looking to get out? Like, why is that subset? What's the information that's valuable to understand from that subset?
That's a great question. It really will depend on the service that we're rolling out and the feature that we're rolling out. Like for the new cart service, obviously it's how many carts are being created, how many products are being added, like the rate of those things. They should be roughly either equal or better, we would hope, right? Also things like rate of network error, right? Since this is a new backend service, right? Are we getting rate limited? Are we getting any 500s or anything like that? Is there anything seemingly problematic, right, with the number of requests that we're making? Also the number of requests. Sometimes, I don't know, you've got logic on haywire in your app. It can be especially with hooks and that kind of thing. The new Redux paradigms can be easier than ever to introduce a loop that you don't intend. So submitting excessive requests from the application side, really just understanding kind of all of the aspects of how the application is performing and making sure that it just makes sense.
Yeah, absolutely. That's awesome. Yeah, thanks for answering that question. Just gonna maybe ask one more here.
Sure.
So how long, or no, so you talked about a triage process, like, and it's a pretty extensive triage process. How long did it take you, and how many, or your team, and how many tries did that take to kind of nail that down?
One.
Hey, awesome.
I mean, we instituted Datadog RUM and found that there was the ability to integrate into a monitor, right? Like the new event stream of error tracking. Just out of the box, and we set that up, plugged it into our Slack channel, and there you go. There's your feed for new issues as they arise. And so that gives you a real quick, like, as an on-call engineer, your responsibility is to observe that channel. And then as new issues come in, as soon as they occur, pop it open, see if it's happening at a high rate. If it's, sometimes you get one-offs, so it's like, okay, maybe it's, maybe it's not that significant or whatever. But then like, if you see it happening a whole bunch, you're like, oh, wow, this is actually new. And then start digging into what did it introduce? Which was it introduced by a specific commit? Was it introduced by a CMS change? Was it introduced by, some external factor, third parties? Like, where did it come from? And so then feeding that back into the cycle of trying to like then fix it is kind of came naturally after that. Once we had the feed of like just knowing when errors were first occurring, that's like the first part, right? Like everything else kind of just fell into place naturally as the team was like, oh man, we got errors, let's fix them.
Yeah, and I remember that talking with you earlier, you were saying something like that. That like your team had, you might hear like an error reported from a user, and you're like, oh, that seems like an edge case, whatever. But like now, with it, like instrumenting this kind of triaging and this, and like, using observability stuff like this,
you don't have to guess.
You don't have to guess. You can just see like, oh yeah, we did this new service, and that's actually a real problem, instead of like the same
seriously
or whatever.
Like,
so
it's so hard when you get just a report from someone third hand, right? Like, we have a member services team, and our customers will, often message in and be like, hey, I saw this error, but it's like, okay, you've got some words vaguely describing a scenario being passed secondhand by the representative to, like you, and then you're like, but I have so many questions, right? Like, what was, in their cart? What step, what page were they on? What, all these questions, which they may not have thought to ask. And now you pretty much don't have the option to dig into it. With having Datadog run and record sessions, again, you're not having to wait until that person bothers to actually submit in and say, hey, I encountered this issue. You could see it implicitly, which means you could see it far sooner, but then also understanding, being able to dig into the context of their session, walk through the various steps that they went through, understand the context of their specific scenario, and then take that context and generalize it, right? And say like, okay, well, how widespread? How many other people are in this scenario? So realistically, how severe is this issue? Is it just because this one particular user did this really super weird thing that isn't something we support technically, and they're like, messing with the JavaScript console, they are doing something just really, or is this a real issue that is normal users are experiencing that we can understand and actually fix?
Yeah, absolutely, man. Yeah, so I think on that note, just context is key. Being able to see why and how and when. Well, yeah, Brian, thank you so much. Thank you so much for your wonderful talk, for having a great conversation after that, for taking some of our questions. Just really thankful to have you, and that you could share some of your journey with us, both as a EM and with your team, and as a developer, and like what practicing observability has done for y'all. Just awesome. Very thankful for that, and can't wait to see you in the future.
Thank you too.
Right on.
See ya.
Right, see you. Bye. Well, it's been a great day, everyone. We've heard so many wonderful talks, just from people like Brian and Danny, Melissa, Priyanshi, Cosme. We have a lot of people doing a lot of great things in this space, and we hope that this has inspired you to think a little bit more about observability, especially in the front end. And what that can mean for your products and your applications and your business. And whether you are on a product team or you're a developer or whatnot, we really hope that this has helped you get a little bit more insight into how practicing observability can help. So yeah, all the best to you in your observability endeavors. If you have further questions for us, please email us. We have people ready to connect with you at events@datadog.com. And yeah, and then tomorrow is actually a really exciting day too. I will be there. So if you want to join me tomorrow to go through some workshops, that would be wonderful. So we're going to be doing a workshop on Core Web Vitals and how to instrument that into an SPA and what it looks like to be able to observe those metrics and go from a like a bad score to a good score. And then after that, I'll be doing a synthetics course where we'll be talking about how to instrument, RUM and synthetics. So we'll be talking about getting RUM into an app and how to instrument that so that you can improve features and whatnot. And then the user experience around that. And then also synthetics. So we'll be doing a workshop on synthetics in order to get that into a CI pipeline. So you can make sure that your experience is the same and ubiquitous across all domains or globally networks and stuff. So join us there. Yeah, and then if you go to dtdg.co/frontend-me to register for that. We'll also be posting this in the chat and share that as well. We would love to see you there. Feel free to follow up with our emails. We'll get some of these resources out to you. So we're excited to share that with you. And then also feel free to follow me on Twitter. Personally, if you want to follow me, I'm twitter.com/obensource. So it's open source with a B. And I'm pretty much known as that everywhere on the web. So love to hear from you as well. If you have any direct questions for me at Datadog, I primarily focus on the front end and front end monitoring, RUM, synthetics, and other things in that space. So thank you so much for a wonderful afternoon, or for a wonderful morning with you all for me. And I hope that you have a wonderful afternoon and can't wait to see y'all next time and join us at the workshops. We'll see you there. Bye.